In this emotional story, a mother is heartbroken when her daughter decides to exclude her from her wedding. The mother, feeling rejected and betrayed, struggles to understand why her daughter would make such a decision. However, everything changes when the daughter discovers the surprising truth behind who really owns the wedding venue. This revelation forces her to reconsider her actions and her relationship with her mother. The story explores themes of family dynamics, forgiveness, and the powerful impact of love and understanding. Through this journey, both mother and daughter learn valuable lessons about reconciliation and the importance of family bonds. If you enjoyed this emotional journey of family, forgiveness, and love, don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartwarming stories. Your support helps us share these powerful narratives with the world. The Broken Bond. Elaine Miller stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection. Her once dark brown hair was now completely silver, a testament to the years of hard work, sleepless nights, and endless care she had poured into her family and career. The silver strands caught the soft glow of the bathroom light as she ran a hand through them. Her hair had turned completely white as she entered her 50s, but it wasn't the silver that bothered her. It was the weariness in her eyes. Elaine had always given her all for her family. A single mother, she had raised 2 children, Noah and Lily, while also managing a demanding career as a cardiologist. Her life had been a constant balancing act, tending to the needs of her patients, working long hours in the hospital, and then coming home to care for her children. She never complained. She had always known that this was the path she had chosen, and she was proud of her work, even if it meant putting her own desires and needs aside. Noah, her eldest child, was the one she had the highest hopes for. He had always been bright and full of potential, and Elaine had dreamed of him following in her footsteps, becoming a doctor just like her. She had invested so much in him, believing that his future would be intertwined with hers, that they would work side by side in the field they both loved. Lily, on the other hand, had been a little different. She had always been the more independent one, choosing a different path and marrying Mark, a man Elaine had never quite warmed to. Mark was distant, aloof, and seemed to dismiss family matters, often leaving Lily to juggle between her loyalty to her husband and her love for her mother. Although Elaine tried her best to be supportive, she couldn't shake the feeling that Lily was pulling away from her. But it was Noah who had become the focus of Elaine's attention. She had put all her energy into nurturing his future, hoping that one day he would not only follow in her footsteps, but would also understand the sacrifices she had made for the family. Yet, as Noah entered his late 20s, things began to change. One morning, as Elaine was preparing tea in the kitchen, Noah unexpectedly returned home. He had always come back to visit from time to time, but today, he was different. He looked more mature, more confident. His hair had grown longer, and there was a look in his eyes that she couldn't quite place. "Mom," he began, sitting at the kitchen table with an air of seriousness. "We need to talk." Elaine paused, her hands stilling as she set the kettle down. Something in his tone made her heart sink. She wiped her hands on her apron, her stomach twisting. She had no idea what was coming. Noah didn't waste any time. "I've decided to get involved in a medical investigation. A lot of things have been happening at the hospital, and I'm working with a group of lawyers and medical professionals to expose some serious wrongdoings." Elaine froze, the words hanging in the air like a heavy cloud. "What wrongdoings? What or?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, though her heart was pounding in her chest. "Noah," she added softly, "I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've worked my whole life to help people. What are you saying?" Noah took a deep breath before answering. "I'm not saying that you did anything wrong, Mom, but I'm part of a team investigating some of the doctors at the hospital. Some of them, including people you work with, have been accused of unethical behavior." Elaine's mind reeled. "Noah," she said, her voice faltering, "this sounds like a witch hunt. You're telling me you're part of a team that's going after my colleagues, my friends? You're going after me?" Noah's expression softened, but there was no denying the determination in his eyes. "I'm not doing this to hurt you, Mom. I'm doing this because it's what's right. We can't let things like this continue, even if it means confronting people we love." Elaine felt a cold rush of disbelief and hurt. "You don't understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've sacrificed everything for this family. I've given everything I have to my career. And now, you, my own son, are working to tear down everything I've built?" Noah didn't say anything at first. He just sat there, watching his mother, the silence between them thick with unspoken emotions. Elaine could see the conviction in his eyes, the same conviction she had once seen in herself when she had been a young idealistic doctor, ready to change the world. But now, that same idealism was turning against her, against everything she had worked for. "I know this is hard to understand, Mom," Noah said finally, breaking the silence. "But sometimes doing the right thing means making difficult choices. This isn't personal. It's about exposing the truth." Elaine's heart felt like it had shattered into 1,000 pieces. She had always been proud of Noah, proud of his ambition, proud of the way he had followed his own path in life. But now, she felt betrayed in the deepest way possible. Her own son, the child she had given everything for, was working to dismantle everything she had spent her entire life building. "I don't know what to say," Elaine whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Noah stood up, walking over to her. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I have to do this. It's the right thing to do." Elaine watched him leave, her heart heavy with a sense of loss. She wasn't just losing her son to his career ambitions. She was losing him to a cause that was threatening to tear apart everything she had ever known and loved. As Noah left, Elaine stood there, staring at the empty space where he had been. The weight of the situation pressed down on her chest. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. Things between her and Noah would never be the same again. The bitter truth. Weeks passed, and Elaine found herself drifting further into isolation. The once bustling corridors of the hospital, where she had worked for over 2 decades now, felt eerily silent. Every time she passed a colleague or a familiar face, she felt their eyes shift uncomfortably, whispers following her like a shadow. No matter how hard she tried to ignore the mounting tension, it was impossible to escape. She could feel the walls closing in around her. Noah's involvement in the investigation had created a divide not just between them, but between Elaine and the people she had spent most of her life with, her colleagues, her patients, her friends. Every time someone questioned her, every time a patient looked at her with uncertainty in their eyes, the sting of betrayal returned, and it cut deeper than any medical procedure she had ever performed. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling shift, Elaine returned home to find Lily sitting at the kitchen table. Lily, her daughter, was the only family member who still came around regularly. Elaine had always been close to her, despite their differences. Lily had chosen a different path in life, one that didn't involve medicine, but she had always supported her mother in her own quiet way. She knew, deep down, that Elaine needed her more than ever now. "Mom," Lily said, her voice gentle as she stirred the tea she had made, "you've been through a lot, but you're not alone in this." Elaine collapsed into the chair across from her, weary and defeated. She hadn't slept in days, her mind constantly racing with thoughts of the investigation, of Noah, of what was to come. The weight of everything was beginning to suffocate her. "I don't know what to do anymore, Lily," Elaine whispered, her voice cracking. "I've spent my whole life trying to do the right thing, trying to help people, and now my son is trying to destroy everything I've worked for." Lily's expression softened, and she reached out to take her mother's hand. "Noah is doing what he believes is right," she said, her voice thoughtful. "He's a lawyer now. He's seen things from a different perspective. Maybe he's just trying to make a difference." Elaine shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "It's not just that. It's the fact that he didn't even talk to me. He didn't come to me first. He's already made his decision, and now I'm the enemy. I can't even look him in the eye anymore." Lily sat quietly for a moment before speaking again. "What if it's not too late? What if you could talk to him? You've both been through so much together. Don't you think he deserves to hear your side of the story?" Elaine's heart sank. She had considered reaching out to Noah, but the thought of facing him after everything that had happened was unbearable. What could she say to him? What could she possibly say to the son who had chosen to stand against her, to work against her in a way that no mother should ever have to experience? "I don't know," Elaine whispered. "I don't know if I can do that." But deep down, she knew that this was the only way forward. She had to try. She had to at least try to fix this, even if it meant facing the painful truth of what had been broken. The next few days were filled with sleepless nights and endless reflection. Elaine spent hours walking around the house, thinking, trying to find a way to approach Noah. Every time she picked up the phone to call him, her hand trembled, and she put it back down. What could she say? What words could bridge the chasm that had formed between them? Finally, one evening, as the sky outside turned a deep shade of purple, Elaine made the decision. She was going to reach out to Noah. She was going to try, even if it meant confronting the hard truths she had been avoiding. She dialed his number, feeling her heart race as the phone rang. "Hello?" Noah's voice came through the line, distant but familiar. It made Elaine's chest tighten. "Noah," she said, her voice steady but soft. "It's Mom." There was a pause on the other end. "Mom," Noah replied, his tone uncertain. "What's going on? I thought you didn't want to talk to me." Elaine swallowed hard. This was it. This was the moment she had been dreading. "I need to talk to you," she said. "I need you to understand something. I've spent my whole life trying to do what's best for you, for our family. I wanted you to follow in my footsteps, yes, but I never forced you. I wanted you to choose your own path. But this isn't just about us. It's about everything I've worked for, everything I've sacrificed, and it hurts that you're standing against me, Noah." She could hear him sigh, the weight of her words sinking in. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said quietly. "I really am. I never wanted to hurt you, but I believe in what I'm doing. I have to believe in it." Elaine felt a lump form in her throat. "I know you believe in it, Noah, but there's a difference between believing in something and choosing to hurt the people who love you in the process." Noah was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke again, his voice softer than before. "I didn't mean for it to be like this. I didn't mean to push you away." Elaine took a deep breath, trying to steady her emotions. "I know, sweetheart, I know, but I'm still your mother, and I'm asking you to hear me out. Please." For the first time in weeks, Elaine felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe there was still a chance. Maybe they could work through this together. But for now, she had to be patient, to wait and see where this difficult conversation would take them. The long road ahead. Elaine spent the following days consumed by uncertainty. Noah's words, though filled with regret, were still tinged with the conviction that his cause was just. But for Elaine, the hurt was still raw. She couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. Her son, the one person she had poured her heart and soul into raising, had become an adversary, someone who stood on the other side of a line she never imagined would exist. The phone call had been a step forward, but it was just a beginning. Elaine knew the road ahead would be long and fraught with emotional challenges. She had to find a way to heal the damage done, not just to her career, but to her family, to the bond she had always cherished with Noah. Yet, how could she rebuild something that had been torn apart so quickly, so decisively? A few days later, Elaine received an unexpected invitation. It was from Noah, asking her to meet in person. The letter was simple, yet its contents made her heart skip a beat. He wanted to meet her at the park, a place they had frequented when he was a child, where they had spent countless afternoons enjoying simple moments of togetherness. It was a place that held memories of their better times before everything had fallen apart. Elaine stared at the letter for a long time before she made her decision. She would go. She would meet him, despite the lingering doubts and the pain that gnawed at her heart. The need for closure, for understanding, was stronger than her fear of facing the painful reality. The park was quiet when Elaine arrived. The soft murmur of distant voices from joggers and families scattered across the open space barely touched the stillness in her heart. She walked along the familiar path, her thoughts drifting back to the days when Noah had been small, his laughter, his boundless energy, his bright eyes full of dreams. She could still remember the way he had looked at her when he was a boy, as if she was his world, his protector. How had they gone from that to this? She found him near the same old bench where they used to sit. Noah stood up as soon as he saw her, his expression serious, almost apologetic. He looked older, more mature than the last time she saw him. There were lines on his face, evidence of the burden he carried, but in his eyes, she could still see traces of the boy she had raised. "Mom," he said softly, his voice filled with an emotion she couldn't place. "Thank you for coming." Elaine nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She sat down on the bench beside him, and for a moment, they both just sat in silence, the years of unspoken words hanging between them. Noah was the first to speak. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said on the phone. I know I hurt you, and I regret it. I've been so focused on what I thought was right that I didn't stop to think about how my actions were affecting you, affecting us." Elaine's eyes softened. "I understand, Noah. I really do. I know you believe in what you're doing, but that doesn't change the fact that you made me feel like I was the enemy, that everything I worked for wasn't enough." "I never wanted to make you feel like that," he said quickly. I just got caught up in the case. I wanted to do something that mattered, something that would make a difference. But I realize now that I've lost sight of what really matters. And that's you, Mom. It's always been you." Tears welled up in Elaine's eyes, though she quickly wiped them away. It wasn't the first time she had cried over this, and it wouldn't be the last. But hearing Noah admit his regrets made her feel a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe they could find their way back to each other, even after everything that had happened. "I'm not asking you to choose me over your career, Noah," she said softly. "I know you're passionate about justice, about making the world better, but what I'm asking is for you to understand that family is the foundation of everything. You can't tear down the people you love in the process of chasing something bigger, because in the end, the bigger thing will be hollow without the people who care about you." Noah sat in silence for a long while, contemplating her words. Elaine could see the struggle in his eyes, the battle between his sense of justice and his love for her, his mother. It wasn't going to be an easy reconciliation. It was going to take time. But the first step had been taken. They were finally talking, finally being honest with each other. After a long pause, Noah finally spoke. "I don't know how to fix everything, Mom. I don't know if I can make up for what I've done, but I want to try. I want to understand. I want to be part of your life again. I don't want to lose you." Elaine looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in a long while, she felt the weight in her heart begin to lift. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if things would ever be the same as they once were. But she did know one thing. They were going to try together. "We'll take it one day at a time," Elaine said softly, her voice filled with both pain and hope. "But I'm willing to try too, because you're my son, and no matter what happens, that's never going to change." They sat together in silence, the pain not gone, but more manageable now, the way a scar can still hurt even after it heals. It was a beginning, a slow rebuilding, a chance at redemption, and for the first time in weeks, Elaine allowed herself to hope again. A journey of forgiveness and discovery. The weeks that followed were filled with moments of quiet reflection for both Elaine and Noah. The conversation in the park had opened a door, but it had not yet unlocked the full extent of the hurt that had accumulated over the years. For Elaine, the pain of betrayal still lingered, but the promise of reconciliation, the hope that they could repair their relationship, was enough to keep her moving forward. Noah, on the other hand, had spent countless nights alone in his apartment, replaying the words he had said, the way he had treated his mother. His heart ached with regret, but it was a different kind of ache now. It wasn't just the burden of the case he had pursued or the professional life he had built, but the realization that he had hurt the one person who had always been there for him. He had always prided himself on being a man of principle, but now he saw how his principles had led him down a path of isolation, driving the people he loved away in the process. It was a difficult thing to admit, but Noah had come to understand that the professional world he had chosen to fight for wasn't as important as the people who loved him, and his mother, Elaine, was the heart of his world, the one person who had always believed in him, even when the world outside had turned its back. One evening, after an emotionally exhausting day at work, Noah called his mother. This time, he wasn't looking for answers or for validation. He was simply trying to connect, to rebuild the fragile bridge that had once been their bond. "Hey, Mom," he said quietly when she answered the phone. Elaine could hear the exhaustion in his voice. "How are you, Noah?" she asked, a softness in her tone that reflected how much she had come to understand about his struggles. "I'm okay," he replied, "but I've been thinking a lot about what we talked about the other day. About everything, really, and I just wanted to say I'm sorry again. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want you to know that I'm trying." Elaine felt a lump form in her throat, but she swallowed it down. "I know you are, Noah, and I know it's not easy. It's not easy for me either, but I think we can work through this. Slowly." "Yeah," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I want that too. I don't want us to be strangers. You mean more to me than anything, Mom." Elaine smiled to herself despite the lingering hurt. "I know, honey. I know. I love you." "I love you too," Noah replied, his voice breaking slightly. "I'll be over this weekend. We can have dinner like we used to, just the two of us." The idea of being with her son again, of having dinner together and perhaps laughing over old memories, was comforting. It felt like a small step forward. "I'd like that very much." As they hung up, Elaine felt a weight lift from her chest. The road to healing was still long, but this small gesture, this simple exchange of words, had reignited the warmth that had once defined their relationship. There was hope, after all. The weekend arrived, and Elaine prepared her home for Noah's visit. She decided to cook his favorite meal, roast chicken with mashed potatoes and a side of green beans. It was a meal they had shared countless times, one of those comforting rituals that connected them to their past. It wasn't just food, it was the memory of those evenings when Noah was still young, when everything felt simpler. When Noah arrived, his face lit up in a way that Elaine hadn't seen in months. It was as if a burden had been lifted from him as well, and he was now able to reconnect with the familiar warmth of home. "Smells amazing," Noah said with a smile as he stepped into the house. Elaine felt her heart soften at the sight of him. "I'm glad you think so. Come on in. I'll serve dinner in a few minutes." They sat down at the table, and for a moment the silence between them felt comfortable, not strained. As they began eating, they shared stories about their days, about their lives. It was as if no time had passed at all. The laughter came easily, like it used to, and for the first time in a long while, Elaine allowed herself to feel hopeful again. "So, how's work going?" Elaine asked as she took a bite of her chicken. Noah shrugged, though there was a slight smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "It's been a bit of a roller coaster, but I'm starting to see some clarity. I'm handling cases that matter, cases where I can really make a difference. But honestly, Mom, I think I've been missing something." Elaine raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Noah paused for a moment, looking down at his plate. "I've been so focused on my career, on proving myself, that I forgot what really matters. What I really need in my life is you. It's always been you. I've been chasing the wrong things." Elaine's heart clenched as she watched her son struggle with his own emotions. It was hard to put into words how much she wanted to hear him say these things, but it was clear he was still finding his way back. "Noah, we all make mistakes. The important thing is that we learn from them. I know how much you care about your work, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm here. I've always been here." Noah nodded, his eyes glistening with the sincerity of his words. "I know, Mom. I'm just sorry it took me this long to realize it." The rest of the evening was spent talking, reconnecting, and sharing memories of days gone by. The dinner table became a symbol of something deeper than just a meal. It was a place where they could rebuild their bond, a place where forgiveness was beginning to take root. As the night wore on, they talked about the future, about the things they both wanted to achieve, and how they could help each other along the way. It wasn't a perfect conversation, and there were still wounds to heal, but it was a start, and sometimes that's all it takes, one small step toward redemption. The strength to forgive and rebuild. The weeks following Noah's visit passed slowly, but they were filled with subtle shifts in their relationship. Elaine found herself not only forgiving him, but understanding him in ways she hadn't before. She'd always known that Noah had been driven, that he had aspirations, but it wasn't until they started talking more openly that she saw how much of his life had been shaped by insecurities and a desire to prove himself, not just to the world, but to her. His ambition, she realized, had always been motivated by the fear of falling short of expectations, of being less than what everyone believed he could be. Noah, for his part, started to find his balance again. His work as a lawyer was demanding, but now, with the clarity he had gained in his conversations with his mother, he was learning to take a step back. He wasn't going to give up on his career, but he had begun to see it as only one piece of his life, not the whole. It was during this time that Elaine and Noah came to an understanding that changed everything. They realized that the damage caused by the betrayal wasn't irreparable. It was just part of their journey, part of the healing process. Neither of them had been perfect, but in the end, what mattered most was that they were both trying. That realization was their first major victory on the road to reconciliation. However, their newfound peace was soon tested. One afternoon, just as Elaine was finishing her rounds at the hospital, she received a call from Noah. His voice, when it came through, was fraught with tension, and she immediately knew that something wasn't right. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, his voice clipped and urgent. Elaine felt a knot form in her stomach. "What's wrong, Noah? What's going on?" Noah took a deep breath before speaking. "I've been approached by a few colleagues at work. They want me to represent them in a lawsuit against the hospital. They're accusing the administration of several unethical practices. Some of it involves things you've been a part of." Elaine's heart sank. She had worked at the hospital for over 20 years, dedicating herself to patient care and the well-being of those she treated. The idea that anyone could question her integrity felt like a personal attack, but she knew that Noah, in his new position as a lawyer, was being pulled in a different direction, one that could threaten their fragile reconciliation. "Are you asking me to get involved in this, Noah?" she asked, trying to steady her voice. "No, Mom, I'm not asking you to get involved, but I think you should know what's happening. I'm not sure where this is going, but it could end up implicating you if we're not careful." Elaine took a moment to collect herself. She was tempted to be angry, to react defensively, but she knew that anger wouldn't fix anything. She had been through too much, and she'd learned that holding on to bitterness would only deepen the wound. "Do you believe the accusations?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I don't know yet," Noah admitted, "but the fact that it's even come up means we have to be careful. The hospital is a big institution, and they've got a lot of power. If they want to go after you, I just need to make sure we're ready for it." Elaine felt a surge of frustration. She had spent her life building trust with her patients and colleagues, and now she found herself caught in a situation where her integrity was being questioned yet again. But she didn't want to put Noah in a position where he had to choose between his career and his family. "Noah," she said gently, "I've given everything I have to this profession, but I won't let anything tear us apart again. We'll face this together, no matter what happens." Noah was silent for a moment, and then he spoke in a voice that conveyed a mix of relief and resolve. "I'll do whatever it takes, Mom. I promise." In the days that followed, Elaine and Noah met with lawyers, doctors, and colleagues who could help them navigate the complexities of the situation. The hospital administrators, who had long been aware of the growing dissatisfaction with some of their practices, were now on high alert. It quickly became clear that the accusations being made were part of a larger campaign to bring about change within the institution, but the question was whether those changes were justified or merely a way for disgruntled employees to target specific individuals. As Elaine prepared to defend herself, she found herself reflecting on her own career and the patients she had treated over the years. She knew that no profession was without its flaws, and that hospitals, like any institution, were not immune to corruption or misconduct. But she also knew that she had always acted with integrity, that her actions had always been in the best interests of her patients. What hurt most was not the accusation itself, but the fact that Noah, despite everything, was now part of the investigation. It reminded her of the distance they had once had between them, how quickly that bond had eroded in the face of ambition, fear, and pride. But she was no longer the same woman who had once been consumed by bitterness. She had learned to let go of the past and to move forward with grace, even when the world seemed to be crumbling around her. she had learned that forgiveness was a strength, not a weakness, and so, with the support of Noah and the people who believed in her, she prepared for what was to come. Elaine's hearing before the hospital board came faster than she anticipated. The tension in the room was palpable as she took her seat at the front of the conference table, her eyes meeting those of the board members. Among them was Dr. Adams, a senior member of the hospital administration who had been one of her biggest allies over the years, but now seemed cold and distant. Noah sat beside her, his presence a steadying force. His hand was warm on hers, a silent reassurance that no matter what happened, they were in this together. Dr. Miller, Dr. Adams began, his voice professional, but laced with an undertone of judgment. We've reviewed the complaints that have been brought forward, and we're here to discuss your involvement in the issues that have come to light. Elaine nodded, her heart pounding, but her voice steady as she responded, I'm here to clear my name. I've dedicated my life to this hospital and to the patients we care for. I will not allow false accusations to tarnish my record. The next few hours were a blur of statements, rebuttals, and questions. But with Noah's help, Elaine was able to present the facts, to show that the allegations against her were not only unsubstantiated, but part of a larger campaign to undermine the hospital's leadership. She explained the systemic issues within the institution and how she had worked tirelessly to bring about positive change. In the end, the board voted to clear her name, but the experience left Elaine shaken. She had been forced to confront her own vulnerabilities, her deepest fears, but she had come out on the other side stronger, more certain of who she was and what she stood for. Healing and moving forward. The victory in the hospital boardroom did not erase the emotional scars Elaine had accumulated over the years. Despite the legal battle won, the strain of the betrayal still lingered between mother and son. Although they had made strides toward healing, there was a lingering tension, a barrier of unsaid words and unprocessed feelings that neither could completely shake off. The love they had for each other was still there, but it was layered with years of miscommunication and hurt. Elaine's days were filled with the usual routine of caring for her patients, but her mind often wandered back to the nights she had spent crying in the quiet of her room. It wasn't just the betrayal by Noah that hurt, it was the fear that somehow, over the years, she had failed him. Had she pushed him too hard to succeed? Had her expectations been so overwhelming that he felt he needed to rebel against her to prove his worth? The internal struggle was a silent one, but it consumed her. She had always prided herself on being the strong one, the one who could face any challenge with grace and dignity. But the battle with Noah had shown her vulnerabilities that she had never been forced to confront before. For the first time, she began to ask herself if she had really done her best as a mother, or if there had been things she could have done differently to nurture a closer relationship with her son. Noah, on the other hand, was adjusting to the aftermath of the hospital board's decision. The pressure of the legal world had been immense, but he had found a renewed sense of purpose. Despite the chaos, he realized that the case against his mother wasn't just about exposing corruption or fighting for justice, it was also about proving something to himself. The drive that had pushed him to tear apart his family was rooted in his own fears of inadequacy and failure. Now that the dust had settled, Noah started to understand that his need for validation had blinded him to what was truly important. He reached out to his mother more often now, but the conversations were still tentative. There was an unspoken understanding between them that, while the legal battle had been won, their emotional journey was far from over. Both had scars that needed time to heal. One evening, as Elaine prepared a simple dinner of roasted chicken and vegetables, she heard a knock on the door. When she opened it, she found Noah standing there, holding a small bouquet of white lilies, their mother-son flower, the one that had always reminded her of the pure love they had shared when he was a child. For a moment, they both stood there in silence, unsure of what to say. Elaine's heart swelled with emotion, but she held back the tears. She had missed him more than she cared to admit, but she knew that the journey ahead was going to require patience and a lot of healing. "I brought you these," Noah said quietly, extending the flowers toward her. Elaine took them, her hands trembling slightly. She didn't know how to respond at first. For so long, it had felt like their relationship was built on a foundation of unmet expectations and broken dreams. But now, standing in front of her, Noah looked different, more mature, more aware of the weight of his actions. She knew that he was trying, and that was a start. "Thank you," she said, her voice catching in her throat. "They're beautiful." They entered the house together, and for the first time in months, the atmosphere felt lighter. They sat down at the table, sharing a meal without the heavy silence that had once filled their conversations. Noah spoke about his work, about some of the cases he had taken on, but Elaine could tell that his heart wasn't fully in it. He wanted to talk about something else, something deeper, but he wasn't sure where to start. "Mom, he began, but the words seemed to get stuck in his throat. Elaine reached out and placed a hand on his. It was a small gesture, but to her, it felt like the most important thing in the world. "You don't have to say anything, Noah," she said softly. "I know what you're trying to say." For a moment, they sat in silence, but it was a comfortable silence, one filled with understanding, even if they couldn't fully articulate the depths of their emotions. Over the next few weeks, Elaine and Noah continued to work on rebuilding their relationship, but the journey wasn't without its setbacks. There were still moments of tension, times when Noah felt the need to distance himself, or when Elaine struggled with her own insecurities about her role as a mother. But gradually, they began to understand each other in ways they never had before. Elaine had always been the protector, the strong figure who never showed weakness, but now she was learning to open up, to express her fears and vulnerabilities without fear of judgment. And Noah, for his part, was learning to listen, to truly hear what his mother had to say, rather than rushing to fix things or defend himself. One afternoon, as they sat together on the porch, Noah looked at her with a seriousness that surprised her. "Mom," he began, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about everything that went wrong between us, and I just want you to know, I'm sorry. I was wrong." Elaine's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't the first time Noah had apologized, but this apology felt different. There was sincerity in his voice, a depth of regret that made her believe he truly understood the pain he had caused. "You were trying to find your own way," Elaine said, her voice gentle but firm. "But I should have been there for you more. I should have been more patient." The words felt like a release, like the weight of years of unspoken guilt had finally been lifted from their shoulders. And for the first time in a long while, Elaine felt like she could breathe again. The journey toward healing wasn't a straight line. There were still moments of doubt, of fear, of frustration, but for the first time in years, Elaine felt like she was no longer alone. She had Noah by her side, and together they were learning how to move forward, one step at a time. In the months that followed, they both made efforts to reconnect with each other, to rebuild not just their relationship, but the trust they had lost. And while the road was long, Elaine knew one thing for certain. Family was about love, forgiveness, and the strength to face even the most difficult of challenges together. A new beginning. It was late autumn when Elaine and Noah reached a turning point in their relationship, a place where they could finally begin to heal fully. After months of subtle progress, their connection had matured from mere tolerance to something deeper, something that resembled the love and understanding they had once shared. But as any mother or son knows, the road to true reconciliation is long, and sometimes the ghosts of the past don't always disappear so easily. Elaine had spent so much of her life focused on her work, on her patients, and on the world outside of her own family. She had built a career that others respected, a legacy that she had worked tirelessly to protect. But somewhere along the way, she had forgotten about herself, about her needs and her own emotional well-being. Her relationship with Noah had suffered because of it, and she knew she couldn't afford to keep ignoring the bonds that mattered most. One chilly evening, as the city outside buzzed with the fading sounds of rush hour, Elaine sat on the porch of her house, watching the last light of the sun disappear beneath the horizon. The cool breeze lifted strands of her silver hair, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to just be. She wasn't thinking about the hospital or any of her patients. She wasn't dwelling on the past. She was just letting herself feel the peace that had eluded her for so long. It was then that Noah came to join her, as he often did now. Over the past few months, he had begun to spend more time at her house, just to be close to her. Their conversations had become more open, less guarded. The walls between them were starting to fall, brick by brick. "Beautiful evening," he said softly, settling next to her in the wicker chair. Elaine nodded, her gaze fixed on the sky. "It is. I've spent too many years focusing on everything except moments like this." Noah turned to her, studying her face, noticing the way her eyes seemed more relaxed, as if the years of tension were slowly melting away. "I'm sorry, Mom, for everything. I know I can't change what I did, but I want you to know I'm here now, and I want to be a part of your life." Tears welled in Elaine's eyes. For so long, she had thought that this moment would never come, had feared that the rift between them was too wide to ever bridge. But now, hearing Noah's words, she felt a sense of peace that she hadn't experienced in a long time. "You're here now," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "That's all I need, Noah." They sat in silence, the weight of the past lingering between them, but somehow it no longer felt insurmountable. It was a new beginning, one filled with the promise of hope and the possibility of rebuilding something beautiful. Life, as it often does, had a way of testing their resolve. As winter arrived, Elaine's medical practice grew busier, but her heart felt lighter. She wasn't just the doctor anymore. She was a mother who had found her way back to her son, and that was more fulfilling than anything she had accomplished professionally. She began to share more of herself with Noah, telling him about the challenges she had faced, the sacrifices she had made for her career, and the ways in which she had overlooked the importance of being a mother. For Noah, listening to his mother was a revelation. He had always seen her as a figure of strength and wisdom, but now, as an adult, he was beginning to understand her humanity in ways he had never considered before. The walls of bitterness and resentment that had once existed between them began to crumble, replaced by a deep empathy. One afternoon, as they were walking through the park near her home, Elaine asked him, "Noah, have you ever thought about what you really want out of life? Not the law, not the career, but you." Noah stopped and looked at her. "I've spent most of my life trying to prove myself. I always thought that if I did everything right, if I was the best, then I'd be happy." "And are you?" He shook his head. "I don't know. I think maybe I've been looking for approval from the wrong places." Elaine smiled, a mixture of pride and sadness on her face. "We all do that, but the trick is realizing that the approval we need most is our own." Noah turned to her, something in his eyes softening. "You've always been strong, Mom. Maybe that's the lesson I need to learn from you." Elaine placed her hand on his shoulder. Strength isn't about being invincible. It's about being vulnerable and knowing that it's okay to need people, to love people, and to be loved in return. The holidays came and went in a blur of laughter and family gatherings. The scars of the past were still there, but they no longer defined Elaine and Noah's relationship. Instead, they focused on the present, the simple moments that made life meaningful: a shared meal, a heartfelt conversation, the sound of Noah's laughter echoing through the house as he teased her about her stubbornness. One evening, as they decorated the Christmas tree, Noah looked at his mother and said, "You know, I think I've figured something out." Elaine raised an eyebrow. "Oh, what's that?" He smiled softly, his eyes meeting hers. "I think the real gift this year isn't the tree or the decorations. It's having you back in my life." Her heart swelled with emotion. "I'm so proud of you, Noah, and I'm thankful that we found our way back to each other." The past year had been a turbulent one, filled with pain, forgiveness, and growth. But as they stood together in that quiet room, surrounded by the warm glow of the Christmas lights, they both understood that the real miracle was not the events that had happened, but the bond they had rebuilt, stronger than it had ever been before. Elaine and Noah still had much to learn about one another, but they were no longer afraid of the journey ahead. Their story wasn't over, it was just beginning, and with every new chapter, they were both growing, not just as mother and son, but as two individuals learning to understand each other in ways they never had before. As the new year dawned, they looked forward to a future filled with healing, love, and most importantly, the kind of connection that only comes after facing the hardest battles together. Forging new paths. The first signs of spring had arrived, and with them, a sense of hope that both Elaine and Noah desperately needed. The world seemed a little brighter, and though the pain of their past still lingered, they could now see a path ahead that was free of the fog that had once clouded their relationship. The tension had loosened, and while there were still unspoken things between them, they were no longer paralyzed by the weight of regret. One afternoon, as Elaine sat in her office after a long day, Noah came to visit. He had taken to coming by often, his visits no longer a mere obligation, but an act of wanting to be there, something Elaine had yearned for when he was younger, but had never quite been able to articulate. "You look tired," Noah remarked, leaning against the doorframe. Elaine smiled faintly, rubbing her eyes. "The job never stops. But it's worth it." She gestured to the chair across from her. "Come sit. Tell me, how's the firm doing?" Noah hesitated for a moment, then walked into the office, taking a seat. "It's going well, but it's not everything. I've been thinking a lot about what you said about happiness, not about how others see us, but about finding peace with ourselves." Elaine looked at him surprised. "You've been thinking about that?" "Yeah," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I think I spent so many years chasing after things I thought would make me happy, success, approval, recognition, and I forgot what really mattered. I forgot how much I missed just being with you, sharing simple moments. It's like I kept myself so busy that I didn't allow myself to truly feel content." Elaine's heart warmed at his words. "You're not alone, Noah. We all fall into that trap. Sometimes we think that if we just do enough, work enough, prove enough, then we'll feel complete. But it's not like that. It's the moments we share, the connections we make, that matter more than anything." Noah nodded, a deep sense of reflection in his gaze. "I don't want to keep chasing something I'm never going to catch. I want to be here. I want to help you, to be a part of your life, the way I should have been all these years." Elaine smiled, the weight in her chest easing. "And I want you to be here. You don't have to prove anything to me. You're enough, just as you are." They sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that spoke volumes, a silence that wasn't awkward or filled with unresolved issues, but one of quiet understanding. Elaine continued her work at the clinic, but now with a renewed sense of joy. She no longer felt the burden of being alone. Her relationship with Noah had shifted, and she no longer carried the ache of being isolated from the person who had once meant the world to her. Noah's visits became a regular part of her days, and their conversations, once strained and awkward, had transformed into real discussions about their hopes, their fears, and their shared dreams for the future. One evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Elaine asked, "Do you ever think about where you'll be 5 years from now, Noah? What do you want out of life?" Noah leaned back in his chair, staring at the sky. "I used to think I had it all figured out, but now I'm not sure. I think I want more than just success. I want something meaningful, something that actually makes a difference, something that feels real." Elaine smiled, a sense of pride swelling inside her. "That's a good place to start. We all need purpose in life. For me, it's about healing, making a difference in my patients' lives. And for you, well, I think you've already begun to make a difference by being here with me." Noah looked over at her, his expression softening. "I've realized that I've been too focused on what I don't have, what I'm missing, but I think now I see what really matters, and that's what I want to pursue." They sat in quiet companionship, knowing that they were finally on the same path, walking beside each other with understanding and love. The pain of the past, though never completely erased, was no longer an obstacle. It had been transformed into a lesson, one that would guide them as they moved forward. As the months passed, Elaine began to find more balance in her life. She continued to serve her patients with the same dedication as before, but now there was room for other things: time with Noah, long walks in the park, quiet moments of reflection. She no longer felt as if she were carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. It was still hard at times, and the guilt of how much she had neglected her family in pursuit of her career lingered, but she had learned to forgive herself. She knew that healing wasn't just about fixing physical ailments. It was about tending to the soul, and her soul had begun to heal too. Noah, for his part, started volunteering his time at legal clinics, working with families who needed help navigating the legal system but couldn't afford high-end lawyers. It wasn't exactly what he had envisioned when he first entered the profession, but it felt right. It felt like a way to give back, to make a tangible difference in the world. One day, after Noah had spent the afternoon volunteering at a community center, he called his mother. "I think I'm going to take a sabbatical," he said. "I want to focus more on this work, the kind that really changes people's lives. I think I found what I'm meant to do." Elaine's heart swelled with pride. "I'm so proud of you, Noah. You're on the right path, and whatever you do, I'll be here, supporting you every step of the way." The healing process wasn't easy, but it was real. It took time, effort, and patience. But as Elaine looked back on everything they had been through, she saw that it had been worth it. The fractures in their relationship had finally started to mend, and the love that had once felt lost was now stronger than ever. She had learned the true meaning of family, the importance of forgiveness, of presence, and of nurturing those precious connections. As they sat together, sharing a simple meal on a quiet evening, Elaine knew that life, despite its twists and turns, had given her exactly what she needed. She had her son by her side, and in that moment, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. The journey forward. Spring had long since faded into summer, and with each passing day, the warmth of the sun seemed to reflect the growing warmth in the hearts of Elaine and Noah. They had come so far, overcoming mountains of misunderstanding, regret, and lost time. The fractures that had once felt so irreparable were now softened, bound together by mutual respect, understanding, and a renewed commitment to family. Yet, there was still work to be done, new challenges to face, new paths to forge. Elaine had learned a valuable lesson over the past months, that healing wasn't a destination, but a journey. There would be setbacks, moments of doubt, but as long as she kept moving forward with open eyes and a kind heart, she would be okay. She could finally look at herself in the mirror and not feel like she had failed. She could look at her son and feel proud, not just for what he had become, but for the man he was still becoming. Noah, too, had made peace with the journey. He no longer chased after superficial measures of success, nor did he try to mold his life into someone else's expectations. He had chosen to follow his own path, one that allowed him to give back, to find purpose, to make real change. It wasn't the life he had imagined for himself when he first entered law school, but it was the life that resonated with his soul. And that was enough. One quiet evening, as the two sat together in the living room, Noah shared a thought that had been on his mind for some time. "You know, Mom, I've been thinking, I want to find a way to give back to people the way you do with your patients. I've been so focused on my own career and success that I never really stopped to think about what really mattered. Helping people. That's where true fulfillment lies, isn't it?" Elaine smiled at him, her eyes filled with warmth. "It is, Noah, and I've always been proud of you, but I'm especially proud of the man you're becoming, not just because of your success, but because you're finding your true purpose. That's more important than anything else." Noah leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. I think I want to start a nonprofit, something that helps people who don't have access to the same opportunities I had. Maybe a legal clinic or educational outreach, something to help those who are struggling and need someone to advocate for them." Elaine's heart swelled. That sounds like an incredible idea. I know you'll make a difference, Noah, and I'm here to help in any way I can." Noah's eyes softened, his voice filled with sincerity. "You always have, Mom, even when I was too blind to see it." Elaine reached out and gently took his hand. "We've both made our mistakes, Noah, but the important thing is that we've learned from them. We're here now, together, and I'm proud of you. I always will be." The two sat in silence, but this time it wasn't heavy with regret or tension. It was the kind of silence that spoke of understanding, of an unspoken agreement to move forward together. The past was behind them, but the future was something they could now face, hand in hand. As the weeks passed, Noah began working on his nonprofit. Elaine was more than supportive, helping him in any way she could. She was particularly excited about the outreach programs, helping him design a mentorship program that paired young people from disadvantaged backgrounds with legal professionals, offering guidance and opportunities that they wouldn't have had otherwise. Despite all the progress they had made, there were still difficult days. Days when old wounds resurfaced, when the weight of the past felt too heavy, but they faced these moments together. They had learned to forgive each other, and most importantly, they had learned to forgive themselves. It was a slow process, but every step forward was worth it. Noah's nonprofit began gaining momentum, and before long, they were able to help many families in need. The pride Elaine felt for him was overwhelming. She had always known he was capable of great things, but to see him turn his talents towards something that truly mattered made her heart swell with joy. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Elaine could feel a sense of calm in the air. The past few years had been full of turmoil, but it had brought them closer. She looked at Noah across the table, his face a little older, a little wiser, but with the same familiar smile. It was a smile that no longer carried the weight of unmet expectations, but one that reflected genuine happiness. "Mom," Noah said, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking. I want to do something special. I want to take you on a trip. Just the two of us. Somewhere quiet, peaceful. We've been through so much, and I think it's time we finally did something for us." Elaine's eyes softened, touched by his gesture. "You don't have to do that, Noah. What I want more than anything is time with you, and we've got plenty of that now, don't we?" Noah smiled warmly, nodding. "Yeah, we do, but I think we both deserve a little adventure, a chance to take a deep breath and enjoy life without all the chaos. What do you say?" Elaine thought for a moment, then nodded. "I'd love that." It was in this moment that Elaine realized how much had changed. She had started this journey alone, feeling betrayed and abandoned. But now, with Noah by her side, she could see that healing wasn't just about fixing what was broken. It was about rebuilding, starting anew, and embracing the beauty of what was still to come. As the days turned into weeks, Elaine and Noah made plans for their trip. It was simple, nothing extravagant, but it was something that represented the new chapter they were writing together. It was a reminder that no matter what life threw at them, they had each other, and that, in the end, was more than enough. The future no longer felt uncertain, filled with regrets. Instead, it was filled with possibilities that they would explore side by side, taking on whatever came their way with strength, love, and the unwavering bond they had fought so hard to rebuild.